I'm the Triangle, the Key Network station in Saigon, Vietnam.
Those of us who were in Vietnam during the war years will remember how boring it got at our bases and fire bases at different times. The two things we had for recreation then were Armed Forces Radio Vietnam and Armed Forces Television Vietnam. One of the favorite things we used to like to do in the evening was tune in Armed Forces Television Vietnam and watch Bobbie do the weather show. Bobbie was a great motivator for the troops. She gave the weather reports for the hometowns back in the United States and the fire bases here in Vietnam. Bobbie visited many troops in the field, and she visited many ships at sea. Here she is in the Saigon studio giving the weather report for Vietnam. Bobbie went on several publicity tours for the different newspapers published for the troops in Vietnam. I'm sure many people today still have the pinup pictures that she passed out stemming from her days at Armed Forces Television in Vietnam. There were several forms of recreation in Vietnam, going to an in-country R&R center, a Red Cross recreation center, or a USO show, if you could get a pass to do these things. But one of the things we knew would be waiting for us every night on television in our hooch was Bobbie. Picture yourself in a hooch or a bunker in Vietnam and you hook up your portable Philco television set and pull up the rabbit ears and plug it into a generator, and you watch a beautiful round-eyed girl giving the weather report from back home and for Vietnam. And she's right there in Saigon. She was over there with us. And all the guys that saw her remember her today. Bobbie celebrated her 21st birthday at the TV studio in Saigon. Here she is getting ready to blow the candles out on her cake. Look at her surprise. Many troops in the field flew combat missions and fought on the ground day by day. One of their biggest forms of motivation and recreation was watching Armed Forces Television and listening to Armed Forces Radio. It was people like Bobbie and the Armed Forces Radio and Television crews that kept our morale up. They did one fine job there in Vietnam. Also, the different USO troops that came there kept our morale up also. Here we see the Hope USO show at the place called Freedom Hill outside of Da Nang. Some of the people in this show were Raquel Welch, Suzanne Plachette, Miss World, and of course Bob Hope himself. You can see the many, many troops here, and they're all waiting to see beautiful Raquel Welch, and there she is right there. I see this outfit that she has on, and it makes me wonder why the miniskirt ever went out of style. There we see Bob out there cutting a rug. Wonder where his golf club is. Once again, Raquel, she sure could dance. This is a USO show, or what we would call a club show. This is in the club down near China Beach, and I believe this girl's from Australia. But some of these small bands came around Vietnam also to entertain the troops at the different bases, and this is just one of the many small bands. I really have to give these people a lot of credit because I've seen several of these bands myself at Da Nang and Chu Lai. So this is very nostalgic watching this. Most of these guys probably left the show and went back to their hooch and drank a few beers, and maybe they even turned on Armed Forces Television or listened to Armed Forces Radio. But we knew when these shows didn't come around and we had a boring night ahead of us that we could always tune in the Armed Forces Television channel and watch Bobbie. This trooper looks all relaxed sitting in front of his hooch with his hound dog there. Life on the bases and at the fire bases consisted of sitting around many, many evenings, drinking some beer, maybe listening to some Armed Forces radio or watching Armed Forces TV. At the bigger bases, you could go to the clubs in the evening, if there was a club in your area, and spend some time there, and maybe watch a floor show if there was one in the area. Or you might watch the base movie. There's the base movie screen for this base. There were several outside movie screens on the bases. Or you could basically just sit around and watch TV. Bobbie was one of the bigger personalities on Armed Forces TV. There were a few talk shows and some other local interest shows for Vietnam. They also showed syndicated shows from the United States like The Fugitive and Combat. Good afternoon. I'm Evan Morgan from Freedom Hill Films. I'm here at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. with Bobbie Keith, former AFVN weather girl on Armed Forces Television, Vietnam. Bobbie works here at the memorial also, and later in this video, we'll see some of her weather shows as they appeared on Armed Forces Television in Vietnam in 1967, 68, and 69. Bobbie, it's really a pleasure to be here at the memorial with you. And I wonder if you could give us a little bit of background about how you got to Vietnam and how you ended up on Armed Forces Television.
When I joined USAID Foreign Service in 1967, it was the beginning of the To Win the Hearts and Minds of the People program. So I went over with USAID, employed by them, arrived, I think it was April '67, and doing the weather show with the AFVN people was an accident in a way. They were looking for people to do a weather broadcast. They asked me if I would audition, and I went out and auditioned and started doing it. It was like an extracurricular activity, something you do as a volunteer program.
I see. Now, did you find your work rewarding with AFVN? Did you get a lot of input from the troops in the field, such as fan mail or phone calls to the station?
I did, thank you. It was very rewarding. It was very interesting because it gave me a chance to go all over the countryside, visit a lot of the different base camps or whatever you want to call them, from up north down to the Delta, down south on the riverboats. Got to meet a lot of the people, a lot of the Vietnamese as well. I wouldn't trade it for anything because all the travel was wonderful. Trying to answer all the letters and trying to recognize everybody was a little bit difficult, but we tried very hard to do that.
I was wondering, as we sit in front of this memorial, what are your thoughts about the past in Vietnam? Does this place bring out a lot of memories to you, good and bad?
I think it does for everybody. All of us know people who fell, who were part of that time frame in history. You can't bring them back. You only try to keep their memories alive by working around here and helping out.
Well, could you tell me a little bit about your work here at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial as a volunteer?
I started as a Yellow Hat volunteer last year in April, preparing for the Memorial Day in May. There were a lot of us down here. It's a very rewarding experience to be down in the vicinity of the wall. There's a lot of us who do spend time volunteering down here, as you can see, the Yellow Hats. You meet a lot of people who come to pay their respects to the people we lost during that time frame. I think a lot of us do it to keep their memories alive and to make sure that people don't forget what happened during that time of history.
Bobbie, speaking of remembering, can you tell us a little bit about your programs that you shot in the Armed Forces Vietnam studio there in Saigon? Can you tell us a little bit about how the show came about, what time it was shot in the day, and a little bit about some of the funny things that may have happened while you were shooting?
The program aired every evening around 8 o'clock. It was right after the news broadcast. We shot it 7 days a week. The crew pulled a lot of stunts on me. It rained a lot in Vietnam, so when it rained, and if I mentioned rain, I usually got a bucket of water poured over me, which was quite funny because they'd have to turn my microphone off. Not because of electrocuting me, but because I probably turned around and said a few things. They would crawl on the floor and maybe pull the hem of my skirt or do crazy things because the camera would show only from your waist up. Kind of like things to distract me, to make it funny, to humor the program up a little bit.
Yeah, that's very interesting to hear about that because we all know a lot of crazy antics went on behind the scenes there at Armed Forces Television. Another thing I was really wanting to ask you about, the segment of your television show that we have on this video called Bobbie's Birthday Surprise. You were so surprised. And can you tell us a little bit about that? What you remember about it, and were you totally surprised then?
I really was. I was very surprised. No joke. Because they had blackened the whole studio out. I didn't even know people were back there.
One thing about it, you looked very surprised when you started to walk off the set and they came in with a birthday cake and everything. Can you tell us how old you were that day?
That must have been when I was 21 years old.
And the producer of the show, or the director, wheeled the cake out. Now, his name was Paul, and you told me earlier you would like to locate Paul. Do you know what area of the United States he's in right now?
Paul is located in Washington State or Oregon, and he might still be connected with the AFRTS, which is going to be having an anniversary celebration throughout the United States. In fact, they're having their celebration here at Fort Myer June 5. I don't know whether Paul would be able to come from the West Coast to the East Coast for it, but I'm hoping that I will run into people who know a lot of the people I worked with from that time frame with the AFRTS group.
Now, can you tell me a little bit about what it was like to work with Paul and the crew there at AFVN?
I'll tell you, Evan, working with the crew, the people at the AFVN station in Saigon was a lot of fun. They were a really nice bunch of people. They took very good care of me. I think I was adopted into the family like a sister. We laughed a lot. I think we cried a lot sometimes. We had our fears. We had our doubts. We partied together.
Bobbie, one other thing that I was really wondering about were your trips to the field to see the troops and some of your tours around Vietnam. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I did quite a few of them. Almost every weekend I tried to go out to a new area in Vietnam. I went down on the riverboats in the Delta. The ACVs, it happens to be one of my favorite vehicles, the air cushion vehicles. They would paint teeth on the air cushion part that would come out of the water, like dragons or something. Did a lot of helicopter trips. There was a Commander Corey out of Long Binh or Tan Son Nhut that would go down and pick the guys up off the LST boats, bring them back to the base, and we'd hop on a big 141, 142 aircraft, 141, and go to Con Son Island for an in-day, one-day R&R for the guys, and a lot of us girls would go out there. Then I went up north to Chu Lai, Da Nang, Nha Trang. One place I went out to the Rome Plows, and when you travel around, there's not always facilities for women, so it can be very embarrassing. But on this one particular trip, they had built and put it in the middle of a parade field, a pink Johnny spot, little pink toilet area. And I looked at that, wondering what in the world I was going to do, but when the call of nature got me after being out most of the day, I had to use it, and I came out and everybody clapped. It can be pretty embarrassing sometimes when you're the only woman around.
Well, that's a very nice story. That's typical of the era. Now, I'm wondering, too, at the end of your weather program, you had given all through the program the temperatures back in the United States. I think that was a nice touch of home for the troops. Also, you gave the temperatures in Vietnam at all the fire bases and the big bases, and you gave the temperatures at the R&R spots. At the end of your show, you danced like a go-go girl would back here in the United States. That's typical of the era, and that was another motivating factor for the troops. And one other thing, you always closed your program, and I'll let you say this. How did you say it?
This is Bobbie saying good night out there to everybody. I hope you have a pleasant evening weather-wise, and you know my wishes go with you for otherwise.
Now, did you get to say that after every show, or did AFVN tone you down? Did they think it was suggestive, you saying that?
I don't think it was AFVN. I did it for a long time until I was wounding down in '69, ready to Deros and go back to the land of the big PX. And someone with a very high rank called into the studio and said they would prefer I not use that expression because it had too many innuendos. I don't think any of us realized it did have any innuendos to say, have a pleasant evening weather-wise.
I think probably what you thought back then, it was just a catchy phrase to end your program with, am I right?
That's right. That's what we were doing.
Now, one other thing, too, speaking of AFVN, I know they had a lot of censorship on their radio programs. You've probably heard about them having to cut songs and things like that. I had heard that over the years. Someone gave an interview a few years ago for public radio, and they said that some of the AFVN songs that were popular in this country back then, some of the top 10, they had to edit because the military didn't think that appropriate for the troops. Did you ever hear anything about that when you were in Vietnam?
No,
You didn't?
I didn't. No, I didn't know of any censorship. I mean, I listened to everything I wanted to. I didn't think there was anything cut out.
Yeah, I had heard a few programs of some of the radio shows that songs were cut out, and a few examples were pointed out at a seminar that I was at once. I just wondered if you knew anything about that.
Do you think I might have been before I arrived in country? Maybe in the earlier 60s, perhaps?
Well, I think maybe it was in the 70s and the later times after that. Yeah, it changed a little bit in the 70s when they had a lot of acid rock and everything.
Oh, my.
Bobbie, this year at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, there's a big celebration coming up. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It's the 10th anniversary of the wall. There will be a big celebration in November. I would hope that a lot of people could come out for this one. It is very special to commemorate what has been done for the people. We have 58,183 names on the wall.
Would you like to see a lot of people from AFVN and AFRTS down here?
I would. I'd like to see them and a lot of other people, yes.
Wouldn't it be nice if Paul and some of the guys in your television crew came down and saw you here?
I would love it. That would be a nice surprise if any of them could make it.
Well, that would really be great. Bobbie, can you tell us anything about your time after Vietnam, what it was like after you left there, and what your feelings were?
When I left Vietnam, it was after the 4th of July, 1969. My last trip was out on the Enterprise, based out in the Gulf of Tonkin somewhere. I wasn't allowed to know where it was. But I was very happy to have done that because I'm not only an Army brat, my mother was a nurse in the Navy. So I felt very good about being able to visit the Navy people before departing Vietnam. It took me 10 months before I arrived back in the United States in 1970. Bumming around Europe, going to Israel, working on a kibbutz, doing odd things. Because I didn't know how to erase the memories of what I had when I was living there. It was very hard. I think the memories come back to all of us a lot of times. When I did come back in 1970, it was a very divisive time in American history. You had all the marches, the peaceniks, so on and so forth. I didn't like the way our military was being treated in general, let alone what was happening to the American vets who had been over there, given up years of their life to be part of it. I took off again. I went back overseas in 1971, and I have rarely been back in my own country since.
Bobbie, as we end this interview, I certainly hope that this video makes people remember. And I also hope that it brings you together with some of your friends at AFVN back in the 60s there. Is there anything you would like to touch on before we close?
Thank you very much, Evan, because, yes, I would like to be in touch with a lot of the people with whom I worked and shared a lot in Vietnam. Not only at the studio, some of the veterans I knew, people with AID, some of the donut dollies, the nurses, a lot of the people who were out there I would like to see again.
Well, I'm sure that a lot of those people will see this video. So now it's time to sit back and relax and return to yesterday and see Bobbie the Weather Girl.
Oh, no. Weather-wise and otherwise.
AFVN presents Bobbie and the Weather. Now with reports on weather conditions stateside, Vietnam and R&R, here's that bubbling bundle of barometric brilliance, Bobbie.
Good evening out there, weather friends. Taking a look at how the home folk have been across our nation this evening, we find that rain seemed to be the rule throughout most of our nation, with shower and thunderstorm activity hitting most of the nation's midsection. Heavy rain was reported throughout the states of Kansas, Nebraska, over to Illinois, Missouri, while light rain was reported throughout the Carolinas. Rain was once again reported down our Pacific coastline in Washington and Oregon, while clear and dry weather prevailed from California over through Arizona, New Mexico, up through Montana, and into the state of Idaho. Dropping into some of your hometowns now, first in our gem state of Idaho, Boise hit a high fear day of 85 degrees, while in our golden state of California, down around Hollywood and Vine, Los Angeles was a rainy, cool day of 60. Across the Golden Gate Bridge to San Francisco, it was a misty to rainy day, cool 57, while out across Mount Rainier in our evergreen state, Seattle, Washington had partly cloudy to rainy conditions, cool 52. Over in the home of the Golden Gophers, our twin cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, had light rain today with a cool 45. Dropping in our Badger state of Wisconsin, Milwaukee reported 50 degrees and partly cloudy to rainy conditions, while in our prairie state of Illinois, Chicago had partly cloudy skies, cool 56. Down around the Ozarks, Kansas City, Missouri, has warmed up to a fair day of 73, while remembering the Alamo down in San Antonio, Texas, was reported to be 75 and fair skies. Big D reported a cool day, fair skies 72. Down through the Everglades to the Miami Beach area, I'm afraid the weather continues to be rather cool, but fair skies 79. Up in our Peach State, those sweet little old Georgia crackers in Atlanta had a warm, fair day of 82. Dropping in our Old Dominion state of Virginia, Williamsburg was reported to be 72 degrees and partly cloudy to rainy conditions. Out around the White House in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., had a partly cloudy to rainy day of 54. While in around Central Park, New Yorkers had a cool, partly cloudy day of 54. Dropping in at the House of Seven Gables, Salem, Massachusetts, was a partly cloudy to rainy day, 61 degrees. Also in Little Rhodey, Providence, Rhode Island, was reported to be 55 and partly cloudy to rainy skies. That's the way the weather has been stateside. Now crossing over to our Vietnam map, looking first up at the old imperial capital of Hue, continues to be sticky and humid, high 99. Out around the Da Nang area, continues to be rather hot and humid, 96, while Quy Nhon reported a high fair day of 97. Around the mountains of Pleiku, it was a high fair day of 91, while the Trang beaches had bright sunshine in 95. Our in-country R&R spot of Vang Tao hit a high 97 and fair sunny skies. Down in the rice paddy land of the Delta, Can Tho continues to tilter the 100 mark with fair sunny skies. Here in Saigon, we experienced another rather hot, sticky, humid day, high 98. That's the way the weather has been for this part of the program. Now for you lucky fellows planning to go on your leave or R&R soon, we'll be right back to sock those temps to you.
Let R&R open the door to beauty and excitement. See Malaysia, yes, Malaysia, bordered by Indonesia and Thailand, the cradle of the old and the new. See the exotic capital, Kuala Lumpur. For your R&R, do something different. See Malaysia. Check with your R&R officer soon.
Looking at our R&R spots, the capital of Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, had a warm, fair day of 86. When around the Ginza area, Ueno Station, Tokyo continues to be cool, partly cloudy, 61. Reports from Diamond Head, our Hello House state, continues to be partly cloudy to rainy days, cool 73. Taipei, Taiwan, reported a cool, partly cloudy day of 69. While down under in Kangaroo Land, the Aussies had a fair day of 77. In the Republic of the Philippines, Manila hit a high, fair sunny day of 91. Well, in and around the temples and shrines of Bangkok, Thailand, was a warm, fair day, high 89. Hong Kong reported a cool, fair day of 70, while the seaport of Singapore was a warm, fair day of 87. That's the way the weather has been in our part of the world this evening. This is Bobbie saying good night from American Forces Vietnam Network. This evening, I'd like to extend a special salute to the fellows out there of the Division Forward at Tan Son Nhut of the 25th Infantry Division. Until tomorrow, each of you have a pleasant evening, weather-wise, and my wishes go with you for otherwise.
AFVN presents Bobbie and the weather. Now with reports on weather conditions stateside, Vietnam, and R&R, here's that bubbling bundle of barometric brilliance, Bobbie.
Good evening out there, weather friends. Taking a look at the land of the Big PX tonight, we find that a storm centered over our Rocky Mountain area is seen causing strong winds whipping across into Nebraska, Kansas, and Colorado. Stockman warnings have been issued for Colorado, Wyoming, and the Dakota area, while strong, brisk southerly winds are seen blowing 70-degree weather as far north as into the South Dakota region. Rain and thunderstorms are seen widespread throughout the Mississippi Valley area. Dropping into some of your hometowns now, first down the Swanee River through our Sunshine State, Miami beaches have warmed up to a fair sunny day of 81. In our peach state of Georgia, those sweet little old Georgia crackers in Atlanta had a fair cool day of 70. Over the Ozarks in our Kansas City, Missouri, was 69 and fair to partly cloudy skies. Down in our Lone Star state of Texas, Big D has warmed up to a fair cool day of 75, while in our Centennial state, our mile-high city of Denver had a cool, partly cloudy day of 57. Over in our golden state of California, in and around Gorman's Chinese Theater, Los Angeles was a cool, fair day of 62, while down at Fisherman's Wharf, San Francisco Bay Area was a misty to rainy day, cool 59. Out across Mount Rainier in our Evergreen state, Seattle, Washington, was a cool, partly cloudy to rainy day of 52. Home of the Golden Gophers, our twin cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, have warmed up to a cool, fair day of 63, while in our prairie state of Illinois, Chicago had a cool, fair day of 66. Over the Potomac in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., has warmed up to a fair day of 68, while in and around Park Avenue, New Yorkers had a cool, partly cloudy day of 67. In our Bay State of Massachusetts, Boston reported a partly cloudy, cool day of 60. That's the way the weather has been stateside. Now crossing over to our Vietnam map, first looking up at the old imperial capital of Hue, continues to be rather sticky, hot, humid, 99. Da Nang reported a high, fair day of 96, while Quy Nhon reported a high 95 and bright sunny skies. Around the mountains of Pleiku, it was a warm, fair day of 82, while the Trang beaches hit a high 97 and fair sunny skies. Our in-country R&R spot of Vang Tao had a rather hot, humid day, high 98, while down on the rice paddy land of the Delta, it still tilters at 100 degrees, fair to partly cloudy skies. Here in Saigon, we experienced another rather hot, humid day, high 91, fair to partly cloudy skies. That's the way the weather has been for this part of the program. Now for you lucky fellas planning to go on your leave or R&R soon, we'll be right back to sock those temps to you.
Wondering where to go for your R&R? See the Philippines. The Philippines, where 4 centuries of Spanish culture has transformed the Philippines into something unique in Asia. See your R&R officer today.
Looking at our R&R spots in the Republic of the Philippines, Manila hit a high, fierce sunny day, 91. In and around the temples and shrines of Bangkok, Thailand, was a fierce sunny day of 89. While the capital of Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, reported a warm, fair day of 86. In and around the swinging Shinjuku area, Tokyo, was a cool, partly cloudy day of 61. While reports from Diamond Head, Hawaii, continues to have a little liquid sunshine with a cool 73. Taipei, Taiwan, was a partly cloudy to rainy day, 69. While down in Kangaroo Land, the Aussies had a fair, cool day of 77. Hong Kong has warmed up to a cool, fair day of 70, while the seaport of Singapore reported a warm, fair day of 87. That's the way the weather has been in our part of the world this evening. This is Bobbie saying good night from American Forces Vietnam Network. This evening I'd like to send a special salute out there to the little monkey mascot Harry and the fellas of the 175th Radio Research Company Motor Pool. Until tomorrow, each of you have a pleasant evening, weather-wise, and you know, of course, my wishes go with you for otherwise.
Ain't got time to take a fast train. Lonely days are gone, I'm a-going home. My baby just wrote me a letter. I don't care how much money I gotta spend. Got to get back to my baby. Lonely days are gone, I'm a-going home. My baby just wrote me a letter. When she wrote me a letter, said she could.
AFVN presents Bobbie and the weather. Now with reports on weather conditions stateside, Vietnam, and R&R, here's that bubbling bundle of barometric brilliance, Bobbie.
Good evening out there, weather friends. Taking a look at the land of the Big PX tonight, we find that snow activity seem widespread throughout Oklahoma over into the Dakotas and state of Montana. We have a cold air flow pushing the snow into the eastward area with snow warnings posted for the states of Arkansas and Kansas. Elsewhere, heavy snow conditions have been posted for the Arizona mountains and state of New Mexico with a 10-inch accumulation reported. We have a high-pressure system throughout our Great Lake area bringing dry and fair weather for this area for a change. Elsewhere across the nation, rain is spread widespread throughout our Gulf Coast area from the Mississippi Valley area into the southern part of Texas. Taking a closer look now to some of your hometowns out there, dropping in our golden state of California first. In and around Los Angeles, it was a partly cloudy, cool 56. Across the Golden Gate Bridge to San Francisco Bay Area, it was a misty, cool day of 51. Dropping in our Beaver State this evening of Oregon, Portland was reported to be 40 today and fair skies. Out across Mount Rainier, Seattle, Washington had a cool, partly cloudy day of 41. Dropping in our Gem State of Idaho at Hells Canyon in Great Falls area was reported to be 32 and partly cloudy skies. Our Centennial State, Denver, Colorado, had light snow activity today with a cool 41 reported. Down through the home of the Bluebonnets in Texas, Big D was a partly cloudy, cool day of 45. Our Show Me State, Kansas City, Missouri, had partly cloudy skies today also with a cool 39. Our Convention City of Chicago had a cool, partly cloudy day of 40. Land of 10,000 lakes, Minneapolis-St. Paul had partly cloudy skies today with a glow of 22 reported. Going over to our east coast this evening, dropping in our Granite State of New Hampshire, Concord was reported to be 25 today and light snow activity. Down in our Bay State of Massachusetts, Boston had 36-degree weather and light snow activity. In our Empire State, New York has had a cool, partly cloudy day of 37. Over the Potomac in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., had partly cloudy skies and a cool 36. Dropping in Tar Heel State of North Carolina, Charlotte was reported to be 50 today and fair skies. Down through Rebel Territory to Atlanta, our Peach State was partly cloudy, cool 54. Down through the Swanee River to the Miami Beach area, it was a cool, fair day of 70. That's the way the weather has been back home. Now taking a look at our Vietnam map. Up in Hue, it was a warm, fair day of 88. Around the Da Nang area, it was a partly cloudy but warm day of 82. Guignan reported clear skies and a warm 82 also. Around the mountains of Pleiku, it has warmed up to 83 degrees and fair sunny skies. The Trang beaches had a warm, fair day of 85. Our in-country Arnas Badavang Cow hit a bright sunny day of 85. Moving down to the rice farmland of the Delta, Canto hit a high, humid day of 89. Dropping in at Fuloy this evening, it was 88 degrees there and fair skies. Here in Saigon, we had a fair, humid day of 87. That's the way the weather has been for this part of the program. Now for you lucky fellas planning to go on your RNISN, we'll be right back to sock those tents too.
When you start making out your R&R application, start it with a capital T for Tokyo. Travel on the bustling subways of Shinjuku, Shimbashi, and Ueno, and see the people. Watch the tugboats on Yokohama Harbor and feel the moods of the city. A towering giant of the city with customs and traditions all its own. A contrasting nightlife with everything to offer. Tokyo, another Eastern R&R.
Looking at our R&R spots, the out of the Philippines, Manila had a warm, fair day of 87. Bangkok, Thailand hit a high 88 with fair sunny skies reported. Whereas Kuala Lumpur, the capital of Malaysia, had a warm, fair day of 85. In and around the swinging Ginza area of Tokyo, it was a partly cloudy, cool day of 56. In and around Waikiki Beach, I'm afraid the liquid sunshine continues with a cool 71. Taipei, Taiwan had a fair day but cool 70. And down in Kangaroo Land, it was a warm, fair day of 83 for you Aussies out there. Hong Kong had a cool, partly cloudy day of 78. West Penang beaches and mountain resorts had a fair, cozy day of 84. Seaport of Singapore has cooled off to a warm, partly cloudy day of 81. That's the way the weather has been in our part of the world this evening. This is Bobbie saying good night from American Voices Vietnam Network. This evening I'd like to send a special salute out there to the fellows of the 605th Transportation Company, ADS, located out at Fuloy. And thank you fellows for watching. And until tomorrow, I hope everyone has a pleasant evening, weather-wise, and you know, of course, otherwise. Stop that. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Bobbie.
Thank you.
What you just heard was a command performance by the AFVN choral group, and I don't think the Mormon Tabernacle Choir has anything to worry about. But on behalf of the guys here at AFVN, we'd like to wish you a very happy birthday on this very special day for you and for us.
Oh,
And we'd like to extend our thanks to Colonel Coates and the Hack Open Mess Division for their cooperation in assisting us in getting this cake. And if you can still see the candles, which are burning very rapidly, you'll find that they are, yes, you'll find they're numerically correct, but the director promised me he wouldn't take a shot of it, so see how old you are. Go ahead, blow them out, Bobbie, quickly.
I did.
You got them. She got them all, and that's about it, birthday-wise, and, of course, otherwise.
Oh, no.
The Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. is a place to come to remember all those who fought and died in Vietnam. Many families of men and women who were killed in Vietnam come here regularly to visit. Vietnam veterans come here in the first step of their healing process. Bobbie is a volunteer here at the memorial, and once again she's doing what she did in Vietnam. She's here to help the troops.
The days of